My fiancé doesn't want to file our marriage certificate even though I'm pregnant with his baby. Why don't we file the marriage certificate together? I suggested in desperation, his obvious hesitation notwithstanding. I desperately pressured him into doing it because I was convinced we both wanted to. I honestly had no idea what he was waiting for. We had been together for 3 years, and we even conceived a child. Perhaps he was a little overwhelmed about the fact that he was about to become a father, but I'd given him enough time to adjust to reality already. I wasn't going to let him postpone it any longer. However, the day before we were to file our marriage documents, my morning sickness took a turn for the worse. And I couldn't stand, let alone walk. My fiancé said,
"If you're not feeling well, I'll go to the city office by myself and do everything for you."
He was more stubborn than usual, and while I initially resented the idea because it was just so special to me, I eventually lost the energy to argue and agreed. Later that day, he went to City Hall alone to do all the formalities. However, "I'm afraid marriage documents with your name have never been submitted, ma'am." This is the story of how I would eventually discover that my fiancé had been lying to me, and how when the truth came to light in complete exposure, I vowed to do everything I could to plunge his life into one of total misery. My name is Hazel Kristen, and I'm a 27-year-old office worker. Last year, I was transferred to the same workplace as Frank, my fiancé, and he was assigned as my mentor for a few weeks. As he taught me my job, we hit it off and started having lunch together every afternoon. I always had fun with him, and we started seeing each other more and more outside of work, until we naturally became a couple. About a year later, we were still together, and we had been living together for just over half a year. I was renting the room where I lived unreasonably cheaply from a real estate agent who claimed they owed me a huge debt for the small favor I did for them when we were in university together. The flat was an excellent property, and it was far too big for just one person to live in, so my situation with Frank was one where he had been living here unofficially for another 6 months before he formally moved in with me. He went on business trips about once every month, and he rarely went back to his own house. I initially planned to live life as it went and eventually marry Frank when the timing was right. However, while it was an extremely exciting turn of events, the fact that I had to take a sudden leave of absence and that I was in a flurry of stress and energy to prepare for submitting the marriage documents was unfortunate. What happened exactly, you ask? Well, I found out I was pregnant. "Frank, honey, you're not going to believe this. I'm pregnant!"
What?
He was even more surprised than I was. I know the order is backwards from what we intended, but we have to think about getting married.
I agree. We should start with all the formalities.
While he did try to sound excited and happy, he honestly seemed more upset than anything else. "Why are you acting so weird, honey? Aren't you happy?"
Oh, sweetie, I'm not acting weird. I'm just really surprised. It's all so sudden. It's my first time being told that I'm going to have a child. But trust me when I tell you, I'm very happy. I love you, Hazel, and I'm looking forward to our life together.
I could understand why Frank would be surprised at this sudden turn of events. We'd been together for just over a year altogether, and in theory, people would want to spend some more time together as a couple before having kids. It was perhaps too sudden for him, given he's a very indecisive, insecure guy. I was sure he was anxious in his own way about the big change in his living environment. I decided to wait a little while until he calmed down and got a hold of the situation more firmly. But after a few weeks, Frank did not seem to want to take any action. In desperation, I made this proposal to him one day. "Why don't we submit the marriage documents as one of our celebrations of our 1-year anniversary, the month after next?" I talked to Mom about it, but she said it's better to do it as soon as possible because it's a lot of work after the birth.
I agree. But I think it's better if we go greet your parents first. I've told you before that I don't have parents anymore, and I don't have any relatives to greet in their place. I don't have any siblings, nor am I in contact with my grandparents and only uncle I know personally.
But Mom and Dad told me that since they met you before, we could go greet them again after we get settled. My parents lived far away from our house, and they were also concerned about my health during my pregnancy, particularly about morning sickness, which was already starting to take hold. Although they had met Frank before, it was only through a casual dinner at their place. And the whole thing was pretty rushed. From the planning to the big day, But they both approved of Frank a heartbeat after meeting him.
I see. Well then, it's settled. We're going to submit the marriage documents on our anniversary.
And so things slowly began to move forward with my slow and steady pressuring of my fiancé. Time passed quickly, and before I knew it, 2 months had passed since I became pregnant. Around this time, the morning sickness had become quite unbearable, and I was sleeping more and more every day in an effort to recover quickly. The day before our anniversary, Frank had even taken time off work to prepare for the next day. When he came home from work at night, he was concerned about my health and said,
So, about tomorrow. You seem to be in poor health these days, what with the morning sickness and all. I could go to the city office by myself and do everything for you.
I honestly resented this suggestion. What? But it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, honey. I want to go with you. This is literally the formalities to merge our last names into one, so I'd like to get it all done together. When I said this in adamant protest, my fiancé was unusually forceful and replied,
Why don't we wait until your health is settled down? Recovering is the most important thing for you right now, and I don't think you ought to do anything until you can stand and walk without feeling dizzy.
In the end, Frank's determination pushed me into taking advantage of his kindness, and I decided to leave the marriage registrations to him. The next day,
I'm home!
"Welcome back, honey!" I proceeded to excitedly ask my husband when he came home. "Did you get it for me? The proof of acceptance?" I had asked him to make sure to get it as a memorial for my sake, as I was not able to accompany him.
Oh shit, I forgot.
My husband replied in a panic. I was mortified. How could you forget it when I asked for it so much?
I'm sorry, Hazel. I'm really, really sorry. But it's okay though. It was accepted.
Sorry's not enough, Frank. I was looking forward to seeing it so much. That is proof of our official marriage. I was going to look at it in the future and remember our wonderful times together. I don't think you understand. I loved Frank more than life itself, and it was of paramount importance that I get the proof of our marriage registration. It was all the more important because I couldn't be there to do the registration with him. When I confronted him about it, he spat out in response.
Don't you dare complain to me about this. I made a mistake, but the fact remains. We're officially married now.
Then he went straight to take a bath. As I stared at the back of his head, I felt a little frustrated towards his indifferent attitude. I genuinely wondered if men in general are not so familiar with this kind of prestigious commemoration. I was looking forward to seeing the certificate of acceptance with my own eyes, and I was still disappointed. But at the same time, I was truly happy that we had finally become husband and wife. I managed to calm down while my husband took a bath. It's funny that a grown human being should be depressed over a piece of paper like that. If I really wanted it, I could just go and get it myself at a later date, in any case. Besides, it was now an official fact that we joined the same family register. So I had to be more mature here and just be honest, enjoy the joy of the whole occasion to the fullest. I told myself that and was determined to live my new life and raise my child in the coming months. "I'm sorry I got so upset about the proof, Frank," I said as I walked over to my husband as he got out of the bath. He put both his hands on my shoulders and smiled warmly.
Oh, it's okay, sweetie. I know it meant a lot to you, and I disappointed you. I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry I lost my temper, too.
We apologized to each other and proceeded to have lunch, as usual, before spending the rest of the day talking and watching movies. At the time, I had no way of knowing that my husband had had such thoughts that day. It was only after the morning sickness subsided that I was able to move around the truth that came to light. And nothing could have prepared me for the shock and betrayal that would overwhelm me. A few months passed, and I called Mom for the first time in a while to catch up on things. She told me, "If your morning sickness calmed down, dear, you better go through all the procedures to register a new family member while you still can. You already decided on the name of your daughter, right? Then I suggest that you get to it. And remember, you'll need your ID card for all that." "Oh, really? Come to think of it, I haven't changed my name on my resident record yet." "You should do it while you still have time." "Okay, I'll look into it." Then, after doing a bit of research about what exactly I needed to do and what I needed to bring, I decided to head to the city hall to go through all the procedures. The next day, after seeing Frank off, I quickly got ready and left the house. When I arrived at City Hall, the first thing I did was to get a copy of my resident record, which stated my name, my address, my occupation, and my marital status as a full-fledged resident of Albuquerque. This would be the first thing I would need for any upcoming procedure I needed to do. However, I was stunned when I received the document at the counter. Excuse me, miss, but I believe this is wrong right here," I told the woman at the counter with an unintentionally strong voice. I quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Which one do you think is wrong?" "My marital status. I got married to Mr. Frank Kristen about 4 months ago. My name was never changed on my resident record, which is why I've come here today." "I see. If I may have a few moments, I can check for you." "Please." A few minutes later, Miss Bluebird, the woman at the counter, said something that rendered my vision kaput. "I'm afraid marriage documents with your name have never been submitted, ma'am." After that, I don't even remember how I got home. I just found myself sitting on the couch in the living room. Frank did say the documents were accepted for sure, didn't he? So could that have been a lie? Then why? Why didn't he file the marriage documents? I felt sick to my stomach, and it wasn't because of the morning sickness. This felt exactly like the time I realized an ex-boyfriend of mine was going to come home in a violent mood after drowning his sorrows. And my intuition had quite literally saved my ass that time. I trusted my instincts completely when they spoke to me, and this time, they were warning me that something terrible was imminent. Was there some underlying, potentially scandalous reason why he didn't want to file the marriage documents? Or perhaps couldn't? I just kept waiting for Frank to come home that evening, and he did, but when he did, I couldn't muster up the courage to ask him about it. His face, which had looked so kind yesterday, looked anything but as of then, and I could only see it as something malicious.
I have another business trip, and it's this weekend, Hazel.
Yeah, okay. I knew he wasn't lying because we worked for the same company at one point, but I couldn't help but wonder if he was meeting someone else while he was going on these business trips. I went to sleep that night hoping things would be better tomorrow, but life can be cruel. The next day I couldn't handle it alone, so I called Mom again. "What do you mean your marriage documents weren't filed?" I don't know why either, but I was too afraid to ask Frank directly. "Then I suggest you consult a detective agency and ask for an investigation. I'm sorry to be skeptical, honey, but it's just not right to lie about something as important as this." I know, Mom. She encouraged me to ask the detective agency to investigate Frank's private life. A stroke of luck helped out too. A duo of detectives were just on their way to the same city on their own business trips as Frank was going. So the agency arranged to have them tail him there as well. I spent the next week waiting for the results. I even asked Frank a question I had been afraid to ask to satisfy my curiosity just a little bit. "By the way, when are you going to terminate your contract with your apartment, honey? Why don't you move all your stuff over here already?" To which he replied grimly,
I know. I'll do it. I'm just too busy with work right now. I've got more to do now that you're on leave. Why don't you take a little of that into consideration for me, Hazel? I'm doing my best to give us a good life here.
"I'm sorry." It was rare for him to talk to me in this manner. His attitude was making me more and more uneasy, and I was becoming more and more certain with every passing hour that the results from the detective agency were more like Pandora's box, forbidden to be opened, for it would unleash havoc and chaos into the lives of humanity. After a week, the results of the investigation were finally ready, and I felt as though I had been hit on the head with a goddamn sledgehammer. I was so shocked that I fell onto the couch.
What? Not feeling well, honey?
Frank had come home and beheld me in a near catatonic state and asked me if I was feeling all right, but I couldn't even face him. I just wanted him to leave me alone. A few days later, when I was feeling better, I told Mom everything and decided to take action. It would not be good for my unborn child if I just let time full of stress and negativity pass by like this. I had to get everything straight once and for all, I thought. I went to a certain place with Mom, who was so kind as to come from far away to help out, while Frank was at work. I rang the intercom of the aforementioned, and Miss Rhonda Parkinson, who was identified as the woman in the photographs I got from the detective agency of Frank walking arm in arm with, opened the door. Can I help you, ladies? I know this is definitely going to sound sudden, but you are Mr. Frank Kristen's girlfriend, are you not? I'm here to talk to you about something. Needless to say, the woman was quite confused. Who wouldn't be, though? Who wouldn't be shocked to open the door to a total stranger who somehow knew the name of their romantic partner? I continued. I'm also in a relationship with Mr. Kristen. In fact, we are engaged. I'm also expecting Frank's daughter. Rhonda's eyes widened at my words, and she led us inside, claiming it was best to discuss the details inside. Once inside, I accepted some tea and lemon meringue pie. I explained to Rhonda the results of the investigation that I had received from the detective agency, Mom providing me with moral support all the while. In case you haven't caught on, allow me to recap. Frank, who I thought was my husband, had been in a relationship with another woman, Miss Rhonda Parkinson, and he visited her every time he went on a business trip. She and Frank had been in a long-distance relationship since he was transferred to Albuquerque. In other words, Frank was dating this woman since before he even met me. That can't be. Naturally, she didn't believe me, much like I once upon a time. However, when I showed her photographs and videos of Frank's home as proof, she managed to believe me in the end. Eventually, the woman began to slowly speak the truth. I've been dating Frank for 3 years. We were originally classmates in university. To sum it all up, apparently last year he was transferred to Albuquerque, and Rhonda couldn't come with him because she was offered a promotion where she worked. It was her dream job, and she wasn't going to give that up easily. She told us that since Frank was transferred, she had gotten a lot busier, and her work never allowed her much time to travel hundreds of miles to see him as of yet. I can't believe he was actually such a scumbag. Rhonda went on to sob for a while, and I cried with her too, because I was just in complete and utter despair over the situation. Mom, who was sitting next to me patiently, gently caressed my back. She suggested that we leave for the day, and after agreeing, Rhonda and I exchanged contact information. After that, I kept in contact with her frequently over the next few days. And she decided to question Frank directly. On his next business trip that weekend, when he went back to Rhonda's home after work, I decided to catch him red-handed. On that day, I went to the woman's house again with my parents. When I rang the intercom, Rhonda answered the door, and upon entering the living room, I found a very surprising sight. Mr. and Mrs. Parkinson, Rhonda's parents, and Mr. and Miss Kristen, Frank's parents, my own in-laws, who I thought never even existed because of a tragic car accident, were there. It turned out that my husband had lied about his parents being dead. Apparently, Mr. and Mrs. Kristen knew that he was dating Rhonda, so he had hidden their existence from me so as not to arouse any suspicion. We all waited for him to come home, our faces scrunched up in anger. Before long, the front door was unlocked and Frank walked in.
Do we have guests tonight, honey? There are a lot of shoes out there.
Saying that, he opened the living room door and his eyes met mine. He instantly froze where he stood, and I could see his face turning pale as he stared at me in complete disbelief.
Explain yourself, Frank.
He jolted back to life at Mr. Kristen's words, and he opened his mouth.
No, it's not like that. I mean...
Then he went and said the most unbelievable words I'd ever heard from anyone. Ever.
I love both Hazel and Rhonda.
Huh? I was so taken aback by what he said that I couldn't help but let out a squeal of disbelief, while everyone in the room was speechless. Mr. Kristen unfroze the earliest, and unfreeze did he ever. He quite literally lunged at his son and struck his fist against his cheek with all his might.
Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. You really think that's gonna fix everything, son?
Mr. Kristen's furious voice echoed throughout the quiet room. Frank slammed his head on the floor and kept on apologizing. We finally exploded in anger at this behavior, more specifically when he got down on his knees to beg for forgiveness. From there, myself, Rhonda, and our respective parents took turns hurling insults at Frank. Then my husband began to make excuses for his inexcusable behavior.
I met Hazel when I was transferred to Albuquerque, and I felt a sense of fun that I didn't feel with Rhonda. I was lonely not seeing Rhonda. I was afraid that one day she would find out, and I knew I had to make a choice eventually, but I just couldn't do it. Time went on and on. Hazel's belly was getting bigger and bigger, and I didn't know what to do.
I literally felt my feelings of love for Frank Kristen drain away, cooling when I heard this statement. I didn't care about the man anymore.
What are you talking about?
I don't remember raising you like this. Frank's nose was bleeding because of the constant slapping from his father, but there was no one to stop it. I said to him as he held his destroyed nose and cowered, "I'm divorcing you." No, wait a minute. We were never married to begin with, were we? So there's no need for that. I'm just glad I didn't get punished for being married to a big jackass. Don't ever show your face in front of me again, and you'll regret the day you ever met me if you try to meet my daughter. Afterwards, I consulted a lawyer. He found Frank's actions malicious, and I was able to file a claim for alimony on grounds for breaking off the engagement. Of course, Rhonda on the other side ended her relationship with him once and for all as well. I then told the company everything there was to know and decided to quit my job and move back to my parents' house. Because I told my workplace bosses about what happened, rumors spread. And Frank started to get the cold shoulder from people at the company. He eventually resigned because he couldn't stand it any longer. His savings ran out after he paid me the alimony he owed me, and he is now living on the edge every day, going to the Public Employment Security Office to look for a job. His parents refused to help him and have completely severed their ties with him. Meanwhile, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl at a hospital near my parents' house. I'm going to stay at my parents' house when I settle down to raise my daughter. I'm sorry you've had such a hard time, dear. You can take it easy on us as much as you want.
We'll do whatever we can to help out, sweetheart.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. I promise you, I'm going to do what I can to give my baby Jenna the best life I can offer her. And I hope I won't be much of a burden for you guys. I'm currently living a very happy life with the support of my family, who love me and my daughter very dearly. Wish us luck!